It's that type of year where if you're making an Oxbridge application, you probably have most of your personal statement done and you're just making the finishing touches. So I wanted to make this video where I talk about exactly that, basically comparing my old personal statement and how I took one paragraph from that with the exact same idea and just put on a few more finishing touches and a bit more polish and nuance to put it into my new personal statement, which was the one that was eventually accepted. And I've split this video into three main things that I did to take my old personal statement paragraph and just add that panache to make it into the new one. Hello everyone, I'm Sam. If you've never seen me before, in 2 weeks I'm going to Oxford to study classics, but let's get straight on with the video. Okay, so before we talk about the differences, let's talk quickly about the similarities. I've colour-coded in my old personal statement on the left and the new one on the right what I think is roughly the same. You can pause it yourself, I'm not going to read through all of it, but we can see the yellow is my introduction, I think this blue is my first main point, this green is the evidence, this darker green is the explanation, and then finally this pinky purple is the conclusion. So let's move on to the first set of differences. We'll just talk about it structurally. First of all, my new one is way longer. It's roughly another third on top of what the old one was, and I could afford this for a few reasons. First of all, I went down from 4 main paragraphs in my old personal statement to just 3 in the new one, so I had more space to talk about each idea and develop it more fully. And another way I could talk about slightly more, and this is quite minor actually, but I just cut some of the fat off from my old personal statement on my new one, giving 2 examples. One of them's psyche, which I talk about the translation of being here soul, but on this next one, empodizousin, I just leave it as metaphorical examples and I don't go on to talk about it in any more detail. Whereas in my old one, I talk about again these metaphors like empodizousin, but then I spend, quite a few words talking about the things again. Cut a long story short, I'm just slightly shredding off that extra layer, which I think can be better spent on talking about a new idea. Okay, so the second thing. Let's talk about this white stuff at the top here, around this blue, which obviously I chose not to put in the second one. So the main point in this blue, on both sides, is that it's kind of hard to translate a text from one language to another and keep the meaning. And on the right hand side, whilst I just set it up, say the point, and go straight into my evidence, on the left hand side, I'm trying to talk about more things I've read. So we can see here that I basically am talking about that I listened to this Masolit lecture, which is just like an online video site. And then again, after I make my point, I said, this is something I've talked about in this competition, this essay competition. Let me talk about what I was thinking in the old one for me to put it in, and then why I decided to take it out for the new one. I thought, in the old one, it was impressive to mention these things, and I was basically name-dropping more things I've read or done or listened to, whatever. So I thought I would get some credit for talking about David Sedley and his Masolit lecture, knowing who he is and what he says, and also the fact that I'd written about this in an essay competition, which also I was commended for. I think I started to realise when I came to my new one, they don't really care about these things, they just care about the ideas and where you take them. And here, I spent way too long on sort of flexing and name dropping and not enough on the actual idea. I would kind of liken this to their stance on extracurriculars and stuff like that. If you play chess for England or you play squash for your county or whatever, Oxbridge don't really care about these things unless you can somehow find a way to relate it to your subject. But here, actually, I realised that there wasn't actually any substance to what I'm saying, and they probably would not care if I entered this essay competition or not, because I haven't developed any of my points. It's basically just waffle, I would say. So I got rid of that, and again, we're saving quite a few words that I can then spend elsewhere. Okay, cool. So let's go on to the third point now, which is talking about all this new stuff, why I decided to put it in, where I got it from, all that. So again, let's look at the old paragraph, and after I've talked about this blue stuff, which is the point, and I go on to my evidence, which is this green, I very quickly go into this dark green explanation. And I would say in my old paragraph, I'm basically only giving one example, and I'm only taking the point in one direction. So the point is that in the blue, it's difficult to translate things, and I'm only giving this green explanation like that. But in the new one, I managed to take it in 2 different ways, which is something I've talked about in my other personal statement videos about having a novelty. If you haven't seen them, I'll attach them, and also at the end of the video, do definitely check them out. But the basic idea is, as opposed to just having a point, evidence, and explanation, the really good paragraphs take that point in a new direction, which is your own direction, and that's what I call the novelty. And I feel that in the old personal statement, I don't really have that. I just talk about where I've got this idea from, and then I basically just conclude it and move on. As opposed to in the new direction, I've now linked it to this new idea of hermeneutics, which I didn't have in the old one, which just takes it to that next level, because I'm drawing links between different things, and in general, I'm just talking about more in my paragraph. The old one was very linear, 1 point, 1 evidence, 1 explanation. Whereas here, hopefully what I've done in my new one is one point, some evidence and some explanation, a new bit of evidence and explanation taking the point in a slightly different direction, maybe even a third one, and then bringing it all back together in the conclusion. I've actually made a video about this exact paragraph, just the new one, analysing in and of itself the different parts, which may be useful if you haven't seen it. So if you want to see this in more detail, as opposed to comparing it to my old and new one, just me dissecting this new one in and of itself, make sure to check out that playlist. But apart from that, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.